Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. We appreciate you joining us. We are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. Whether you're watching us live on the app or the website or wherever means you found us, thank you for doing so, or watching after the fact. We do, as I said, appreciate that. Today, we're going to be talking about the Columbia River Gorge Commission and the work that they do to maintain the Columbia River Gorge and that scenic area for hundreds of miles, really, across that entire section there. There is a lot that goes into it as far as maintaining the beauty of that. There's a reason that you don't see a whole bunch of development along the Columbia River Gorge, except for in specific areas, and there's a lot of work to make that happen. So we spoke to Kristen Wolniakowski, from the executive director of the Columbia River Gorge Commission to talk about this, Christina, and we really go in depth on this to figure out a little bit more of what is involved with it and some of the funding concerns that they had as well. So let's jump right into this, and we'll find out more right now. For having some time to talk to us. I know we're going to get you talking about some of the funding and some of the different things that have been coming up as far as the Washington side, the Oregon side with the Columbia River and the Columbia River Gorge. But to start off, I think for everybody, if you wouldn't mind, could you let us know just a little bit about what the Columbia River Gorge Commission is?
The Columbia River Gorge Commission is a bi-state agency, and we were designed and created by both Oregon and Washington to protect the natural resources, the scenic vistas, the cultural resources, and the recreation that we experience in the National Scenic Area.
So
we oversee.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we oversee all the protection of these resources here, while also helping to support economic vitality with jobs that come through tourism, small business loans that come through the original National Scenic Area Act. We help with making sure that the National Scenic Area stays really beautiful, vibrant, ecologically significant, diverse, and that the communities that are here that live in the National Scenic Area have access to all of this beauty and this treasured landscape.
I mean, that's a lot that you're balancing there. A lot of different interests and parties to help maintain that, the Columbia River Gorge as we know it. In this work that you're doing, do you have any maybe examples that the public might notice of something that's been a work of the Columbia River Gorge Commission?
Well, I think the entire National Scenic Area is the work of the Gorge Commission. The fact that pretty much it stayed as it has been for the last 100 years. I think that's part of the reason why the National Scenic Area Act was passed by Congress back in 1986, because people really felt strongly that this national area of significance has so much to offer. It's geologically very unique, it's very significant, and because of the geology of the gorge, we have a real diversity of landscapes. We have all kinds of habitats here, from high desert grasslands all the way to the wet conifer forest. And I think people really cared about this landscape and wanted to keep it intact. That's why they created the Gorge Commission to see it on a regional level.
And that makes sense. I mean, you see it when you drive through there. And so really a lot of your work is the reason that we don't see, massive plants and industrialization of those stretches of the Columbia River. It's because it's being maintained and balanced with some of the work that you do.
Yes, and one of the important things, though, is that as you're driving through the National Scenic Area and enjoying these incredible agricultural landscapes and the forests that are intact and helping to produce habitat, the one thing that you notice is that there's 13 urban areas here. We don't have any jurisdiction, whether it's Hood River or Cascade Locks or the Dalles. We don't have anything to say about how the development occurs within those urban areas. So those are the areas that we really want to concentrate the development in, because those are the areas with infrastructure that can help support the industry, they can support different kinds of uses, they can support housing that we need so badly. But once you get on the other side of those urban area boundaries and you step aside into the wildflowers gorge or go on the hiking trails, you know, that's really why we wanted to have a scenic area, to keep the area that's outside of those urban areas as beautiful and ecologically as possible. But also, the people that come to visit the gorge, they spend time in those urban communities. They want to go to Hood River or to White Salmon or to Stevenson. Any of those 13 areas all have something to offer economically that helps the local businesses, attract the tourists, and also we have an opportunity through these partnerships with all these different state agencies, local government, we work with 4 treaty tribes. We're all working together with the counties to try to make this place work as a very livable community that has economic prosperity, but also that still looks like it did, you know, 100 years ago.
I love that you can go there and still see what it looks like 100 years ago, and that balance is so important. And you mentioned all those different agencies and cities and all the cooperation that has to go in on that. The one thing I wanted to bring up here too is the funding side of things, since it is you know, on both the Oregon side and the Washington side. And I know there were some concerns recently about some funding from the Washington side, and I wonder if you could just give everybody, you know, maybe an overview of how that works.
Well, through this bi-state compact that both Oregon and Washington signed back in 1987 that actually created the commission to oversee the gorge, we receive equal funding from both the Oregon legislature and the Washington legislature, and they really have to match each other. So if one state gives us a little bit more money, hopefully the other state will top up to match that. And if one state decreases the amount, then the other state has to. So it's really a balancing game. Every 2 years, I go to the legislature, I present what it is that we're doing, why we need the funding that we need for our small agency, and what are the programs that we're working on with our partners in the gorge, and essentially have to make a case for our funding every 2 years. And so first I go to the Oregon legislature and make a presentation, and then in Washington, we don't do the same kind of process, but we spend a lot of time talking with legislators and helping them understand the importance of investing in our agency, because it's a very small agency, and but yet we have a big task together, and that's why we need the partners that we, counties and our agencies. So, as you know, it's been in the news that Washington State has had a pretty significant budget deficit. And so there's a lot of federal funding that the state isn't receiving anymore. And that's the same, it's true in Oregon. And so when they're trying to balance out all the different demands on the funding for Washington, for all the different agencies and initiatives that they have, of course, they're having to look at where to cut. And it was about a $12 billion deficit. So I think they were shaving off funding from all the different agencies. So we just received information a week ago that the funding that we asked for was about $2 million from the Washington side, and that was cut by about 25%. So next week I go to the Oregon legislature, and they will most likely have to match that reduction in Oregon funding as well. So it's every 2 years. Agency directors have to go and try to figure out how to find the funding to keep our agencies going. And I want to let you know that we're, as a small agency, we're very, very tightly budgeted to be able to do what we do. We have the responsibility for overseeing 292,500 acres and 80 miles of the river. And so, and all the tributaries. it's a lot of work. And I'm sure people never think about that when they're here in the gorge and they're enjoying themselves, whether they're drinking a beer, on the in Hood River and looking out over the beautiful landscape. They don't really think about what it actually takes to keep it looking this way. And I want to do a shout out to our county partners, because the way that the Gorge Commission works with our county representatives, there's 6 counties that we work with in the Gorge. In Oregon, it's Hood River County, Multnomah County, and Wasco County. And in Washington, we work with Clickitat County, Skamania County, and then Clark County. So in each of those different counties, we work with them to administer those regulations that we need to have in place in order to make sure that the development is compatible with the landscape, that any development, whether it's a house or a barn or any kind of development, essentially anything that disturbs the soil, and we need to look at what are the cultural resources there, what are the scenic values, how is that structure going to impact the scenic value of the gorge. You want people to look at the landscape. You don't want people to notice a house in that landscape. So we try to blend everything in. So we don't say no to homes, or we don't say no to putting in new vineyards, but they have to be put in such a way that it will create an opportunity for the landscape to be first. And we want to protect agricultural land for agriculture. We don't want it to be subdivided. We want to protect the forests that are here for forestry activities. And so all these different uses of the land, the lens that we look at all of this through is just to make sure that the landscape remains intact and the resources are being protected. And we really feel that we can do that and contribute to the economic vitality because of that. People do want to live here. People do want to make a living here. They do want to recreate here. So how do we balance all those different uses to still keep it looking as beautiful as it does?
All right, and we are listening there to Christina Wolniakowski, the Executive Director of the Columbia River Gorge Commission. For those of you who are watching live right now, we are going to need to take see some nice scenery of the gorge. If you're watching on our live stream, you'll see a little bit of a different programming, but it'll be about 2 minutes. And then we'll come back and continue playing this discussion with Christina, just finding out more about the Columbia River Gorge Commission. And in particular, coming up, we're going to talk some more about their funding and some of the concerns that happen when you have a bi-state agreement. You've got the state of Oregon and the state of Washington. Both of them need to be working in conjunction, but they're also separate. So how does that all work out to get that funding? We're going to let you know all about that here in just a few. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. All right, we are returning now to our programming. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. Again, this is Fox 12 Now. So we're going to continue our discussion here with Christina Woniakowski from the Columbia River Gorge Commission and find out a little bit more about that. I mean, that's so incredibly valuable. I really appreciate you explaining that to everybody, too. Just because you're right. A lot of times you drive down there, you see the Columbia River Gorge, you see how beautiful it is, you see all of that, but there's a reason that I guess you don't see a whole bunch of houses on top of all of those rocks, all of the hills, and that's part of that balance of maintaining that, and that is a tremendous amount of work that you're doing, balancing economic, cultural, geological, a lot of different things there. And so when it comes to this funding, the losing some of that funding, 25% on the Washington side, and it sounds like from what you're saying, that's what you anticipate on the Oregon side as well. How drastically is that going to affect your work?
And that's what we're evaluating. We just got this news, and I'm here with my spreadsheets and trying to look at, where can we actually have any kind of savings that, out of a $4 million 2-year budget. So it's about $1 million per state, per year. And that keeps the lights on in our office, all of our operations. It also funds staff that, we're all working families here, toddlers and teenagers in college. So, we're our little staff of 10 people, are really trying to do the right thing with work. And so we're looking at every place we save any money. And part of it is that we had great ambitions in this next year to start looking at how we're actually monitoring the health of the scenic area. So we have this program called Vital Sign Indicators. And for those of you listening in, it's like you go to the doctor and you get your blood pressure taken, you get, all these vital signs have to be evaluated to make sure that you're healthy. But how do you apply that concept to the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area? And so our vital signs are like, how healthy are our wetlands? How cold are the tributaries to the Columbia River that are important habitat for salmon? Because we want to support our salmon populations, we want them to thrive, and they have to have a certain type of water quality and temperature. And so that's part of what we're trying to do, is to look at what are the things that we can monitor with our partners to determine whether those tributaries in the National Scenic Area are healthy enough to be able to support the salmon. Or we look at oak habitat. A lot of people look at oaks and they think, those are beautiful trees, but they don't necessarily know that when you've got these different clusters of oak habitat, they support multiple species of birds and wildlife. And so sometimes when people want to build, an oak tree is in their way. And so we look at, where can we protect those oaks, or how do we do a development so those oak stands are going to be left intact, but we can still build a house near them. So those are the kinds of questions we're looking at. What's the state of our oak population? Other critters that are really important in the gorge. You might have heard of the pika, which is usually a small, really beautiful potato-sized little rabbit species. And they're usually at these really elevations on the rocky slopes of mountains. But we have them right here at the river level in the gorge because of the really special geologic habitat that we have. It's really remarkable. And so we have all these volunteers that are going out and doing a pika watch with Metro and the volunteers with the zoo, and they monitor those pika populations. And so part of what we're looking at is, as long as the pikas are here, that means the habitat is healthy. And that's another indicator. So what we're looking at is, what are those things that we need to measure and monitor in order to determine that we're actually doing our job of protecting those, the scenic vistas, how healthy are the wildlife corridors? Because we have a lot of wildlife corridors where deer are migrating through here. We want to make sure we're protecting them. We also are looking at economic indicators. And this is really important for us because when the National Scenic Area Act was passed, it was passed with two purposes. One was to protect the landscapes. It was also to protect and support economic vitality in the gorge and make sure that the agricultural land is used for agriculture and productive and not, as I mentioned, not subdivided just for health or the forestry. But we also have this program which is to give small loans out to a revolving loan fund, new businesses that can't get credit anywhere else for commercial bank. And so in Oregon, it's the Oregon Investment Bank, and in Washington, it's the Washington Investment Bank. And so we work with those certified loans to make sure that small businesses have to thrive during the board.
Wow, that is so many different ways that you're working on that and contributing there and doing it on that budget. And so when it comes, I guess my final question here, just for people with the funding side anyway, coming up here with Oregon, what are the steps that come next? You said you're going over your spreadsheets, going over the balances, and then you're going to go present that. Is that what I'm understanding to the Oregon legislature, or that already happened?
That already happened back in March. That we actually was on our 10-year anniversary, my 10-year anniversary, that we presented our plans for what we wanted to do. And when I was talking about those vital sign indicators, that's something that we wanted to accelerate in the next couple of years with our funding. But because we did get reduced funding, we might have to scale that back a little bit. And we might have to scale back the work that we're doing in climate, because we created another program on our climate change action plan. That was something that the public told us loud and clear in 2020 when we were going out and doing public meetings, that climate change was never anything that was part of our work here at the Gorge Commission. And how can we build a more resilient habitat, and how do we get more people aware of how they can contribute to climate resiliency. And so we created a new program with funding, and we're in the process of implementing that plan now. How do we protect the wetlands for resilience and those cold water refuges that I mentioned? How can we help contribute to the conversation about transit and multimodal transportation through the gorge? How can we do more for promoting electric vehicles and charging stations? So our climate change action plan has many different aspects to it, and we really want to step that up. We have a new program called the Climate Stewards Program, where we're engaging members of the community here to become like ambassadors for climate knowledge throughout the gorge. And so we're doing trainings for them and field trips and trying to make sure that we build in some kind of a stewardship aspect to our work as well. Since we're not the only ones who want to do this, we have so many people that really care about the gorge, and how do we give them the kinds of training and knowledge that's needed for them to contribute to our climate change action plan. So I think with the reduced funding, it's not that we're going to go away. It's just that our work is going to be slowed down until we can go back to the legislature and hopefully get more funding to just top us back up.
Well, I hope Dr. Kerr, and thank you for walking through this with us too, and just explaining this out, because you mentioned, sometimes people may not understand, what it is that you're doing, or at least that's what I was thinking, and now I understand so much more of how this works, because you explained it all out like that, and it's very important what you're doing there. I think my final question here is just, is there anything that you think the public should really most importantly know about the work that you do?
Well, I think the key word is partnerships, that we don't work alone and we don't work in isolation in a little office in White Salmon, Washington. We are really out there in the community, and we rely heavily on work with our county partners And they're the ones who are implementing the management plan, all the aspects to protect the gorge. They're the ones who are on the ground working with the landowners to make that happen. And explaining to the landowners a lot is really important. And so we're trying to do as much as we can with the county partners, and we really value them. We also work with the tribes, and that's really important for people to understand that we have 10,000 years of cultural history in the gorge. This is where the tribes lived and fished and prospered at a time long ago, but we really want to make sure they prosper now. And so we're trying to work with them to find ways to really protect their cultural resources and way of life. And I think finally, a lot of the people that we work with in the gorge are important to tell us what they need and where are some obstacles to economic vitality that we maybe are not aware of. So I think to me it's always about dialogue. It's all about a two-way conversation about how we actually achieve the dual purpose of protection and economic development.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for joining us and sharing all of this information and what's going on there and how that work happens and all the different partnerships that you have. I really appreciate your time. Christina, thanks for being here on Fox 12 Now with us.
Greg, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Huge thank you to Christina Wolniakowski. Apologies there at the beginning when I said Kristen. Christina, thank you for being on this show and talking about the Columbia River Gorge Commission. This is something that we get to do here for Fox 12 Now. We get to do these deeper dives, longer segments. It's a lot of information that we just shared right there that Christina did, but it really gives everybody a better understanding of how all of this works. And when you're driving through the gorge, maybe it'll give you a different perspective or appreciation of some of the things that you see and maybe some of these projects that they're working on there with that. And again, we appreciate everybody joining us. We do need to take a quick break because we're going to be coming back, if you're watching live, with the Fox 12 Weather Podcast video edition. So if you're watching on the live stream, stick with us. If you're watching on any other platform, you'll see this video end, but make sure to come find us any other place. So the Fox 12 Oregon app is a great way to watch all these segments. But however it is, thanks for doing so. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.